Welcome to the Business Alchemist Podcast. With us today, we have Cindy Ashton. Cindy, welcome to the show and thanks very much for making the time.
Well, hello, Phil, and everybody listening in. Phil, you are such a deep, wise soul. I have loved being able to follow you on LinkedIn, and just every single post is like you challenge our thinking, and it's brilliant. And so I am so excited to be here and deliver, hopefully, all kinds of alchemy for your audience.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Cindy. I guess the real reason that I wanted to have you on the show, as well as knowing you and liking you and loving what you post, I was sure that you've got so much to add for my audience. My audience are CEOs and senior leaders, and they're often, they need to be better. They need to be able to influence. They need to be able to sell. They need to be able to paint a picture for the future of their companies.
That's right.
So would you like to tell us, Cindy, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and who you do it for?
Yeah. So I have been in my industry for almost 30 years. And it's been incredible. It's been an amazing career. And so I have had two careers which intertwine all the time. So throughout my history, it's always been that I'm the award-winning TV host, actor, singer, dancer, and simultaneously side by side, I have a business brand called Speak From Your Power. And one of the things that I have noticed throughout the years is that a lot of senior executives, CEOs, executives, they're really, when they go out to get quote unquote speaking training. And I say that because people think before they really get to know me, they say, oh, you're a speaker trainer. But if you look at most speaking training, a lot of it's very much about stand here, pose here, project your voice, be polished. And so for the majority of my ideal clients, they feel like a fraud. It actually makes them feel less confident because they feel like they're having to put on airs, as to say. They're feeling like now they have to be overly polished and confident. But it doesn't feel like it's rooted in who they are. They feel like they're it just doesn't feel good. Or the ones that do feel like good about being polished and they're like, yes, I'm feeling confident. The problem is there's a couple of problems, Phil. The first is that people more than ever cannot deal with fake anymore. And so while in the past being very poised and polished and projecting, while that was very important, you have to remember that right now our world is in crisis. And every time we think we're getting through something, another big something happens in the world. It's happening minute by minute at this point. People are less trusting than ever, especially when COVID hit. That to me was the big start to the decline of trust. If you want people to trust you, it's about developing that deeper connection, being truthful. So when I work with clients on Speaking From Your Power, when I come from a rich background of headlining Times Square Fashion Week and the Oscars Luxury Gala and doing all these big events, you cannot get on those stages unless you know how to connect on a deep emotional level with an audience. You can't get up on Times Square Fashion Week like I did and do all this fake shit. It's got to be truthful. And in today's society, people are less trusting and they're craving truth and they desperately need to feel like they're being seen and heard and connected. And so the old school way of doing sales, of doing leadership, all that stuff that's too polished is simply not landing anymore.
So it sounds like what you're saying is what you do is help leaders become much more authentic in how they communicate. Or is that not strong enough?
Well, it's that. And I also look at, yes, the authenticity, the truthfulness, but also in terms of the tactics. Because a lot of people who are training people on speaking, if you ask them if they know the anatomy, the physiology, and the biomechanics of how the voice works and how the body functions, most of them don't, which is bizarre to me because they're training people on speaking. And the majority of them don't actually understand how the voice works. So a lot of the training out there is, I want you to project your voice and over articulate and right. But do you see how that comes across as a little aggressive? But when
Harsh.
you, right. And so I can tell you, because I not only am I a singer, dancer, actor, and I also trained in opera for 30 years, but I also have a degree in kinesiology, which in Canada, where I was born and raised, is the basically it's pre-med. So I was dissecting bodies and brains and it was so much fun. The brain was very, very, very confusing organ though. I was like, oh, this is so confusing. But I specialized in relaxation therapy. And because I've been doing this for 30 years, one of the things I really noticed is the stress patterns in the body directly influence your speaking voice, your body language, your presence. So when I am looking at somebody and they are carrying stress and or unresolved trauma, which a lot of people are highly triggered, people's stress levels are higher. When our stress levels are higher, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. In layman's terms, that is a stress response. So that means their brain is scattered, so they're not actually able to take you in. That means that their muscles are tensing up. That means that you, as a CEO or that senior leader who is in front of your team and you have to deliver something, your brain is scattered and it's not coming out right because you are not thinking clearly. Or somebody gets, ordinary with you and you get triggered into a stress response. And then you start talking super, super fast. You talk louder. You're trying to get your voice heard versus knowing how to calm yourself, drop your voice, use breath and voice to draw people in and get them to focus on you, which is great for you to learn these techniques. But it's also great if you have people who are expressing stress or trauma and unable to listen. And so what I do is definitely speaking, but it's so much more. It's more about getting in your body, knowing how to regulate your own system, knowing how to use breath so that you can speak and have natural dynamics instead of fake things like, I'm going to project and I'm going to be quiet now. But when I'm quiet like this without being connected to the body, I sound meek and I sound like a little girl, you know? So it really is really learning how to be full body in your body. And there's so many, and I can go on about this, but if you're curious, if your audience is curious, there's also
Mm.
things you can do with breath that actually stimulate people to buy more.
No, I can imagine. I can imagine. I tell
Yeah.
you what would be really useful to know, Cindy.
Yeah.
Could you just give us a little bit of an insight as to the kinds of people who come to you
Yeah.
and what kinds of problems they have and how do you fix them?
I love that. So I'm going to give you a couple of client stories because I think that's going to help the most. Because then you'll see the process that I take people through. And process is important because if you
Mm.
don't give a client the process, it's not going to stick. It's super important. So I had a client, he was the vice president, he was a president of sales for Tony Robbins for 8 years. He was a president of sales for several people like Tony Robbins in the self-help world.
Mm.
He knew a ton about sales. He could got my number. He got on the phone with me. I started asking him questions. And 5 minutes later, he says, oh, you're way beyond a speaking trainer. He says, here's exactly what I need help with. How much is it? And I dropped a number and he just gave me the credit card. And within 3 months, now this is a guy who was a president of sales for Tony Robbins and Chet and like all those big names. He knows everything about sales you could possibly imagine. And within 3 months, by the shifts that I created in his speech, his messaging, his storytelling, so the actual like written stuff, as well as body language, speaking voice, we increased his sales by $660,000.
Wow.
So let me tell you
Wow.
how we did it. Right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Wow.
So here's the thing. I looked at his messaging. I looked at his script, his speech. And most people, when they're presenting, they just deliver the content. They put it in order, they deliver it. And even those that tell stories, they're telling their stories like, well, I went to the store and I bought a shoe. And then I met this person. They're just giving me facts. We're not feeling it viscerally. As a professional actor, next time, I can tell you that it's all about the internal emotions and connections that you create, and the visual anchors and the snapshots that get people emotionally invested in you, because you have to get them to viscerally feel it on a cellular level. So next time you watch a movie or a television, here's a task
Mm,
for everybody, and you're going to get this.
mm.
When they do the mid shot or the close up, notice that you cannot move that much as an actor on film when you are in those shots, when you're in those frames. So notice that all their work is internal. And I love doing this with my clients, teaching them how to internally get the emotion. So they're not trying to be happy. Like I see speakers get on stage and CEOs and senior leaders, and they're trying to be animated. And I'm like, but it's fake animation and it's over the top and it's not real. But when you go to watch a TV show or a film, notice that it's all internal, and they're not saying anything. They're not doing anything specific, but you actually know if they're sad. So, and I almost feel like I want to do a demonstration right now. But okay. So let's see
Why
if I
not?
can.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All
So
right.
let me just try and
Yeah.
summarize back what
Yeah.
you're
Let's summarize
saying.
this first.
You're
Yeah.
saying that it's obviously not about just saying the words. It's
That's
not
right.
about just getting into the physiological position.
Right.
It's also being able to feel the emotions inside the
Yeah.
person who's doing the talking and the communication.
Yes. And
And
in
is it
addition to
something
that,
else?
yes. And what the actual words are saying is important, because most people tell a story and they're like, well, I met somebody named Bob and Bob did this and then Susie did this. And there's no life to the story. So when I work with clients, I work with putting languaging in there that actually builds emotional anchors that people lean in, builds visual anchors that they will never forget that snapshot ever again in their mind. And you'll be memorable. Building in things like story loops. Do you know what a story loop
Yeah,
is?
yeah.
Okay.
And when you say a
Building
story,
a story
you
loop.
mean an open loop. So you open the loop and
Yeah,
people want to stay within the loop. Yeah.
right. So there's a gazillion acting techniques that I do in that, but yeah, so it's super important to understand that storytelling isn't just telling me the facts of the story. Storytelling is making it live. When actors get on stage, they make it's so alive. That's what the audience is like.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why the audience watching a movie is like, right? If they're doing a great job, it's because they're storytelling on every single level, and that's how you get buy-in. I mean, I remember when what was that? Hannibal Lecter. Remember what was that movie?
Mm,
I can't
yeah.
remember.
Silence of the
Silence
Lambs.
of the Lambs. I mean, listen, we all believe that Anthony Hopkins was a flesh eating, human eating, because right, that you cannot fake that.
No, no.
You cannot fake that. And if we're really going to have truthful leadership, truthful sales, we've got to stop with sales scripts and canned crap. We've got to get down to the roots and know how to truly connect.
So here's a question for you, Cindy. I can imagine some
Yeah.
leaders listening to you now thinking, holy my goodness. It sounds like Cindy saying, I have to become a professional actor in
No,
order to be effective communicator. You're not saying that, are you?
no. It's just about learning. So let me go back to the test with
Yes.
Doug, because if I want this to be real world for people, because right now it's very heady.
Yes.
So with Doug, we looked at his speech, and he had like a 10-20 minute close at the end of it, which is what a lot of these gurus do. And I said, we're getting rid of the whole close. We're going to get it down to a minute. He's like, you will never be able to sell that way. I said, watch me. And what we did is we took the stories and we rewrote them with language that was more visual. We added in all these different tactics. And then so we went to the deeper psychology of what the motivation is, because as actors we are constantly analyzing what is my motivation, what's their motivation, how do I create the energy flow and the languaging and the body language so the other character in the scene does what I want them to do. So when I'm working with clients, I am literally helping them to rewrite stuff to create those narratives, so they don't have to be an actor, but they start to learn how to make it sexier, where people actually want to lean in. Both words, but here's the other piece. So with Doug, we rewrote all of his stories. We got rid of the sales pieces that people saw themselves in the story. It wasn't just being told a story, but they actually felt themselves in the story, and it made them trust him more without him having to sell, because they go, wow, Doug really understands me. Then by the time he gets to the sale, it's just that they've already bought into him because he's built that trust through story. But we also did it through voice and body language and presence.
Got you.
So there are times when you speed up to create excitement or fear, right? And then that you actually want to learn how to use voice to make an audience deliberately stressed out so that you can go back and relieve their stress and then they buy from you, or get them super excited that they feel the dream. But again, that's all knowing when do you use a voice and in different ways. So a lot of it is storytelling, and that's what we did with Doug, and that's how we were able to catapult him so quickly.
That's incredible. Now, you started to talk about a system. You started to talk about how you actually do that. And you were saying, let's try and make it a little bit less heady. Is there anything are there any little tips, any little techniques that we could practice now
Yes.
that people could, the people, the guys and gals who are watching this could practice themselves?
Yes. Let's do some things. You have to do this along with me. So I'm going to teach your audience an exercise. And so one of the exercises, the first thing is that all the stress that we hold in our body, and we all hold a varying degree, directly influences the voice and how it comes across. So for most people, they don't have a nice, resonant, beautiful, flowing voice. So there's people who are like this and their jaw is stuck, or they sound really angry because their jaw is stuck and they're clenching. Or there's people that start to talk and they go back into the throat, and then they start to talk and then they go back into the throat. And so there's all kinds of different vocal issues. And the majority of people I meet actually have a lot of vocal issues that's related to the stress patterns in their body. So a really fun exercise that I love to do, and Phil, can you do this with me when I teach it?
Let's go.
Let's dive in. It's so fun because these are quick fixes. So I can, like, usually with clients, I do some quick fixes so they get instant results, and then we go deeper. So the first thing is that, especially if you're sitting at a desk all day, you're a senior leader, you might get up and down, but you're sitting at a desk all day. Literally put your cell phone. I mean, we're all addicted to our portables. I live in Paris and my French comes out sometimes. Your cell phones. Okay. So I find sometimes a Franglish thing happens and I'm like, shit. So pardon my Franglish. So portable in
Yes.
French is a cell phone. I literally set the timer that, like, once an hour, once every 2 hours, you just get up and for 2 minutes, you just breathe and you roll the shoulders. So we're going to do this together. Roll the shoulders. And if you can stand up, we can't stand up or else our heads will be cut off. But like, ground your feet, like stop your feet on the ground, really feel them full shoulder width apart, let your toes spread out and just breathe with it. So you're taking a breath in and let it be full body, whatever feels good. If you feel cranky, and you do that a few times and then you do it the other way. And it seems so simple, but it makes all the difference. And you're just breathing with it. And then after you've done that a few times, if you feel like you want to do some, whatever it takes, it's just to feel like you're just getting the crankies out. It's good for your body, but it loosens up a lot of the tension. And then what I have my clients do is my favorite. It's called cactus arms, because we're going to do this in a moment, but the majority of us are holding stress in the chest. So when we hold stress in the chest, we're only breathing through half of our lungs, and we've got all this happening, and we either sound like this, or if we're slouching, then we sound like this and we sound like we're insecure. So ideally, I would love for you to breathe right into your pelvic floor, but that's too long of a lesson to do here. So the quick fix is you do cactus arms. So you literally, again, shoulder width apart, you bring your arms up and back, and you could do this against a wall. Make sure you tuck your tailbone down. So your tailbone is pointing towards the ground. So no sway back, okay? And you should feel a good stretch here, and make sure that your scapulas, those shoulder blades, are down, okay? And just breathe for 30 seconds. And if you want, you could do sound with it if you need to move it around a little bit. And you do this for about 30 seconds and then you shake it out. Just getting it all out. I love that you're so with me on this. And then you do it one more time. Yes, just letting it all out. Okay. So both times you would do it about 30 seconds. And I guarantee you that your posture is going to be so much better because most people go, oh, I need to stand tall. But when they stand tall, they're lifting their chest and adding stress, and then they have an abnormally big voice. This releases the stress, so you get into good posture. Then we need to fix the voice because that alone has probably released a lot of the tension. So, in terms of voice, what we want to do is we want to open our face, including our mouth, super big and close it super small 5 times. So, here we go big, little, squeeze it, big, little, big. We look ridiculous, little, it's awesome, big, little, last time, big, little. And then massage your jaw, massage your face, massage your forehead, anything that feels tense. If your trapezius muscles are tense, whatever that is. So just massage. Probably do this before you put your makeup on. I'm not wearing, if you wear makeup, like I'm not wearing foundation right now. I just have some eye makeup on, lipstick.
No, that's not a
Um,
problem I have.
I know a lot of people don't have that problem. So the next thing you're going to do is you want to work on a resonance. And by the way, if you're watching this, you can actually go and speak a paragraph of whatever, a text message, a book. So go back after like tomorrow, for example, when you go to do this, go back, record yourself speaking that text, like that text message, for example, on a recorder, and then do these exercises and go back and speak it. You're going to hear your voice is different. It's weird
Wow.
and the best way possible.
Wow.
So the last thing I want you to do that's super easy to do is get into your resonators. So when we think about a trumpet, right? When we're on
Hmm.
a trumpet, where does the sound resonate out from? The end, the horn part of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're with a drum, right, it comes out of the bottom. If you're on a piano, you lift up that hood and it's coming like the resonant. So we all have resonators just like an instrument.
Mm.
So we want the sound, and it's going to depend on where you are in the world, right? We want our sound placed correctly. If I'm Russian, the Russian is further back in the placement, but you're not Russian. You specifically,
No,
Phil, are
I'm
not Russian.
Scottish.
You're Scottish. So
Yes.
you're more forward, darling. See, you're more forward. I mean, now I'm probably more British than
Yeah,
Scottish right
that's
now.
more British. Yeah,
I
yeah,
know I can't do a Scottish accent. I can do
yeah.
a muddled British accent. But, Brits are more like, hello, or hello, I'm more on my nose and I'm more forward here, right? Is that, I don't know.
Yes,
That
that's
was,
good. Yeah, that's good.
it's not good. North American, okay. Well, if you're Southern, the states, it's like, "Hi, my name is Mary Lou." That's definitely more here. It's more forward. But in general, to be safe, if you're American or Canadian, like I am, you want to put the sound in your resonators, but a little bit lower. Now, in terms of, there's probably a lot of Brits and Scottish people, and Irish. I can't do Irish accent either, but their placement is probably going to be more forward, which is fine. But it's important for you to know who are you talking to, right? So, if you have a lot of, there's not a big enough difference. Well, some Scottish and Irish accents are really hard to understand. Oh, and Cockney is like a whole thing on its own. So you just have to remember who's your audience that you need, that you're talking to, but in general, you want to get the sound here. Unless you're Russian, you want to get it way further back. So what we want to do is we want to hum. So everybody hum with me. And just
Mm,
point where the sound, where is it coming? So,
mm,
where do you feel the buzz? Is it your lips? Is it here? Yeah. Phil, yeah, you want it coming near your lips. And I'm just doing this generally again. It depends on culture. It depends on where you are in
mm,
the world.
mm,
So I'm going to do a little example that you can move where the sound is in your face. Now, I don't expect anybody to do this exercise, but I just want you to have the awareness of placement.
mm.
Remember, I've had 10 years of opera singing, training, and 30 years of on stage and screen. So this is weird what you're about to see. Look at the look on your face. I'm not even done. the look on your face. It's super
Wow.
weird. It is. So, I mean, for singing's sake, if I'm singing opera, it's more fun. It's more like here, right? But if I'm doing, well, like if I'm doing that more, my placement is more here. If I'm doing more Broadway, it's a little bit higher. Some people can get it. Like it's here, right? So it's all of like, where like you're like totally amazed. But for everyday people who are, who are gifted in their own way, you want your sound here. So a great way to practice the voice is either on an M or a Z or a Z, because I'm Canadian. Is it Z or Z in Britain?
Z.
Z.
Well,
It's just
that's a
American
good.
with a Z.
It's a good question because it's probably different in Scotland to England.
Oh, so interesting, right?
Mm. So you're saying this is about awareness. This is not being able to have the skill that you've got clearly because you've been doing this for
no, they're
10
not going to
years.
have that skill set. It's been a whole lifetime. Yeah.
But this
But
is using these.
go ahead.
Go on. So this is using these exercises in order to become aware of where your voice is.
Not only come aware, yes, and not only come aware, but get your voice placed correctly. So when you release all the stress from the body, it automatically makes your voice sound more resonant. It gives you more dynamics in the voice because you're not holding on to all that stress. The second thing is that I'm going to give you an exercise right now to get the vibration here. Because unless you are somewhere that like a Russia, you want your voice here. So everyone's going to do this with me listening, hopefully. It's just you're going to go, and tap your lips to remind yourself you want the sound here. Can you feel it now there? I can hear it.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Yeah, now you can go, I'm so proud of you for doing that on the air.
Well, if I can't do it.
Well, here's another one you could do is a Z or a Z. So it'd be zzz. You'll feel the buzz and the placement there right away. There you go. There you go. Do you hear the difference?
Yeah.
Because you were too much in your throat before, Phil. That's why yeah.
Zzz.
There you go. And then you could also use a V. And I always feel like I'm like on a motorcycle with a V. I can't do it though because I just want to like itch my lips.
I'll do it for you.
There you go. Hey.
Okay.
So if you do that routine where you move, you do shoulder rolls, you do cactus arms, you do the stretching of the face 5 times, and then you do some humming, you will automatically be so much further than most people in how you're showing up because your posture will be better. There'll be more relaxed in the body and your voice is going to be more free because you've stretched it out. You've relaxed it. You've got the placement better. And you'll have more dynamics that are natural without having to, I need to be louder now. I need to be quieter now. Like it will naturally come from you because you're more connected. So that alone is going to make a difference. Like I said, literally take a text from a book or something tomorrow when you do this, when you redo this, and literally record yourself before, do the exercises, and record yourself after and listen back. It's so crazy. It's wild.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. So moving it to the next stage then, because I can imagine a lot of the people watching this, as we know, many people, even CEOs and leaders, get nervous when they go up on stage and they have to present. So what do you have for those people?
Yeah.
And how do you help them through that kind of process? Now, clearly, we're not going to be able to, do it all in this short podcast.
Oh, but I love it.
Great.
All right. So there's different reasons why you are getting nervous. The first is that you have not embodied what you want to say. So the big thing that I see a lot of leaders do is that they map out, what they're going to say in that meeting, for example. And then once they're there, they start fumbling and they get nervous. So this happens to a lot of them. So part of what you want to do to reduce that nerves is embody it. And the way that I do that is not by telling my clients to memorize. Because the problem is that on the opposite spectrum, a lot of people go, I'm just going to memorize my 5-minute talk in front of the room with my team. I'm just going to memorize it. But the minute that you forget that one word, you're screwed. Or if you are nervous, like we talked about, the sympathetic nervous system, the stress response is activating, it scatters your brain. So what you want to do is, so what I do with my clients is I get them to get these stickies and literally, choose a word, or if you're more of a visual person, a visual and map it out, the big talking points, map it out with a couple of words or a visual and do it, step by step. And then you're literally like, you just have those visuals. So let's say, I'm trying to think of let's say that there's three things you want to tell your team. Okay. We're going to talk about how we increase sales by 20%. That was the first piece. So you're going to take that sticky or that picture, you're going to stick it on the wall, 20%. That's your trigger. Whatever that trigger is for you. And you might even have a couple of notes, 20%, mainly from, I don't know, retail, and whatever that is. Then you're going to take your second sticky, and then you're going to say, best practices we learned from that 20%. So you're just going to say best practices. And if there's 3, you're going to do best practices. And then you can go best practices, early morning calls, I don't know, whatever, those 3. Then you're going to take that last one of next steps. And in the next steps, you've got 1 or 2 points. So you literally map out the whole thing, and you start with, and I usually do it because I'm musical and kinesthetic. For me, I'm like, okay, so 20% celebrate. The middle part was 3 lessons we learned. Last part, next steps to optimize. And then I just do that until I know that I've got that flow. So even if I forget a word, it doesn't matter, because I'm like, yes, but I'm still on the 20%, right? So, and then if there's sub things, again, you just practice those. Now, I always tell people, now here's another thing that in my background is that I used to be an educational consultant part-time, alongside all my other amazing careers. And there are 8 different learning styles. So how you memorize should be based on how you learn. I'm musical, I'm kinesthetic. That's how I'm going to learn my script. If you are somebody who's very linguistical, you might even decide that you write out these points. If you are very visual, I've had clients map out their entire presentations with no words and just, here's a cow, here's a and that works. So if you can get the overall structure, and once you learn the system, you can literally learn how to do this and get it down within 2-3 minutes. I mean, you could throw me anything and I can get it memorized within minutes because of this tactic.
And this is the way you described this at the beginning, was embodying the presentation, embodying the speech.
That's right.
But the embodying could be different things for different people depending on what your favorite communication style is.
Right. I've had people who meditate because they're intrapersonal learners. So they actually have to sit and meditate, and they visualize, and and then I have some people who are chatty like I am and like you are, and we actually have to talk it through with a colleague. It's like, let's talk it through, let's role play it. So you just have to find the way that you do that, but you're always looking at what are the main content pieces that I'm looking for, what's the order, and your embodiment happens, like you said, Phil, with the different learning styles, depending on how you learn best. But that alone we're going to talk about physical stress in a moment, but that's the mental stress that people get into, and that ends up making them muck up. So when you take that 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes just to do this exercise, and it gets faster as you learn how to do it, it'll help you immensely in these meetings.
So it sounds like you're saying, whatever you do, don't try and practice the whole thing by rote. Yeah, word for word. You don't want to do that. So you're looking to have component sections of the speech embodied depending on how you like to learn, how you like to,
That's right.
Whether you're a visualizer, whether you're a more kinesthetic,
Okay, so hold on. in terms of not doing it rote, I'm so with you. However, you can still rehearse what you have to say, but you're rehearsing by walking around. Walking, no matter what your learning style, walking actually is a movement that will help it get into the cells. So, but you're leading that walking. When you're walking around, you're literally, you have those 3, 4 staples in your head and you're improvising on them. And what I've noticed with clients who go beyond the 5 minutes of just learning the main sections, when they walk and they spend 15, 20 minutes just walking it through and they keep doing that, they actually find better ways to talk about it. And then they feel really much more natural. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's not just the pillars and knowing them. It's actually walking it through and letting it fall into your body and working itself out so that you do know it.
So where do you sit then, Cindy, with regard to PowerPoint presentations? The
Okay.
dreaded PowerPoints, and how do you, because obviously in the corporate world, senior execs are so used to talking to slides, but I would imagine that's probably not really, you probably don't believe in that, is my guess.
So before I go there, I just want to address physical stress,
Right.
because we talked about the mental stress. The emotional stress is a whole thing that I don't know if we've got time for that. Let's see. But the physical stress. So the way that you immediately, I'm going to give you 2 exercises right now that take less than a minute that will get you in your body. So when you're starting to notice you're tensing up and you're starting to notice that you're getting stressed out, you want to start exhaling longer than your inhale. So the reason why is it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your relaxation response. So just take a moment, sit at your desk or stand up. Again, roll your shoulders, feel your feet, just take a breath in, really feel like you're breathing in through the pelvic floor, and exhale out nice and long. And imagine sending that air down to the ground. And if you do that for 1, 2, 3 minutes, it'll completely focus your mind.
And again, but this is before you go on to speak, not
That's
during.
right.
Not during.
Well, yes, before you go to speak. However, if somebody is tasing you in some way, they're nudging at you, you're starting to get nervous. We tend to start talking a lot faster and get louder, and then we get like defensive, right? So if that is happening, the way that you deal with that during the presentation, during that sales conversation, whatever that is you literally start to slow down your speaking. And notice that you are calming your own voice down, and imagine exhaling longer than the inhale while you're in there. So Phil, have you noticed an effect with me doing that immediately?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But
Just
this,
by being aware of how I'm breathing, just that in its own right has the awareness has made me feel less, I feel more relaxed.
yeah. Yeah, it's like magic, and you are able to use that breath. The exhale longer than the inhale is going to be the fastest way for you to calm yourself down. Whether it's before, you should do it before, but whenever you are feeling like you're being confronted, any of those things. I was once in this very bizarre situation where I was traveling in a country by myself as a woman that I probably shouldn't have been. And I got pulled into a room because they thought I was suspicious doing that, and had 4 machine guns pointed at me and interrogated and strip searched against a wall. Probably one of my more terrifying experiences of my life. And the only reason why I wish it was filmed is because of what I do. Look at the look on your face. But because of what I do for a living, I just sat there and I lowered my voice, and I kept, so pitch also matters. And I kept exhaling longer than the inhale. And over the hour interrogation, clearly they found nothing. I mean, like I've belonged to so many Peace Corps. Like I'm like the least terrorist type of person ever. But it was so interesting because originally it was 4 of them with machine guns pointing at me, interrogating me, loud voices, trying to accuse me of stuff. And by the time that hour and a half was done, I don't know, I was not looking at my watch. I was just, I was shaking so hard though. I was shaking so hard. They were actually sitting down. 2 of them had dispersed themselves. And then, even when they decided and discovered that I was innocent, they literally the two that were left over had machine guns, literally marched me to the airport like a criminal, but they were barely holding their guns. And they weren't like holding it like really hard. They were like, look at the look on your face. I have to write a whole book on this crazy shit that I've experienced. I've traveled all over the world by myself and I'm fearless that way. I probably shouldn't be. But but they were like really loose in their hands holding this. So one woman's like, "Oh yeah, that's so great that you do music. My son did," and she's talking to me while putting like a machine gun very loosely held, like it was. And then because they were just following procedure at that point. And then I got escorted on that plane. And then as soon as I was on the plane, I was puking. Everything was coming out of every orifice. I was in that bathroom for a long time. I couldn't sleep, I think, for 29 hours. I was so shaken up and terrified after that. But
Wow.
it's a real testament to the power of, again, connecting with your voice, knowing how to exhale longer than the inhale, and calming yourself down.
So are you saying, Cindy, that as you control your physiology, your
Yeah.
breathing,
Mm-hmm.
then the people you're with, the people you're speaking to, they can almost innately feel that lowering of stress, and that lowers their stress.
Yeah. The voice alone, and it has to be connected to breath, because right now I'm talking with a soft voice and this is how it sounds. But right now I'm connected to the breath and it's lower and it's grounded. And there's physiology to this. So I'm going to be a science geek for a moment since I do have a science degree and it's so much fun. We have in our solar plexus, just above the belly button, an inch or two. That's our solar plexus. It's the emotional brain. Technically, in the scientific terms, it's your celiac nerves. When we are consciously breathing there and we're connecting it to breath and it's massaging your celiac nerves, it's automatically raising your oxytocin, which is a love drug, which makes people softer around you. It makes them more attracted to you. So if you're trying to sell, you want to get that oxytocin going, but it's raising your emotional intelligence. So not only, and your gut feelings, because that's where all the emotional nerves are. So then you're able to get gut feelings more accurately about people, but your emotional intelligence is raised. So you're actually able to read other people and regulate. This is why when people say you're a speaker trainer, I'm like, I don't know any speaker trainer that talks about most of the stuff that I talk about. And it's not dissing them. Everybody has good work to do, but this is a level of persuasion and influence. It's about being rooted, embodied, connected versus doing the fake stuff.
And that's really important, not just for influencing,
Yeah,
selling, but the key word that leaders really think about a lot is engagement. How do we engage with our folks? How do we engage with the people we are selling to? And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're saying if you're connected to yourself, if you're connected to your breath,
yeah,
then you've got much more chance of being connected to the people who you're trying to
that's right.
engage with and influence, etc.
Right. Because in addition to what you're saying is, when you're not connected to breath, I'm not connected to breath. Can you notice that it's not just my voice, but my body doesn't seem stable? But when you're breathing into the pelvic floor, your body is very stable. You're more trustworthy. I had a client, he would go to his sales meetings every Friday religiously, get the 6 steps of how to sell. And for 3 years, he was stuck at average sales. When I worked with him 5 sessions later, he doubled his sales and it stayed doubled. And the reason why is because I'm like Paul, and that testimonial, I have a lot of testimonials on my recommendation section of LinkedIn, but he had a lot of social anxiety. He had a lot of, anxiety in his body, and that was showing up in his body language. And he came across as awkward. But just learning how to be in the body and breathe and connect to the breath, it made him be able to, and raising the oxytocin, it made people lean in and listen to him
Mm,
because he wasn't even getting past them because they were tuning him out. And so many
mm,
people don't realize how their body language is coming across. Or when they learn body language, they're like, oh, if I put my eyes up this way, if I point this way. And while that form of body language is helpful, it's only helpful insofar as how you're connected to your body. Because if your body language is off because of the stress response happening in your body, it's going to affect your sales greatly.
Okay. We're having a little bit of trouble with the Wi-Fi, but I think you're still there. You can hear
I'm
me
still
okay?
here. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yay.
So that sounds like this could be useful for pretty much everyone who has to influence, who has to engage, who has to lead. So what would you say are your perfect clients? Who are the
Yeah.
people who get really the most from your teaching, from your coaching, from your, from everything that you do?
Yeah. So I think about the people who I've made the greatest impact in. They are the leaders. They are the leaders who are either kicking butt, but they're like, how do I amplify this? Or they are the people who, I once had a CEO of a company. She was the owner, the CEO, 60 employees. And you put her in a room with men and her voice went right back, cracks, and she was not coming across as her best self. So
Mm,
I get a lot of like the people who are either like the Doug Browns who are already rocking it out in their sales, rocking it out in their leadership, presidents, but they're like, I want more. I want to be seen on a bigger level. I want to really kick ass.
mm,
Or you get the people like my client who has, you know, who, you know, she has 60 employees
mm,
and she would do great with women, but she wasn't able to close the big deals with men. So it really is the people who are those people who are in the realm of influence, but also the people who are truly about other humans. My internal dialogue is that I don't work with assholes.
no.
If you're like, I just don't. The people that work with me, they are the people who are in it for the people. They are one love kind of people. They believe in diversity. They believe that every person has a voice and deserves to be heard. They're not the dictators of the world. They're the people who are really for all people. They've got their values in check.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned emotional stress. We've probably got maybe just a few more minutes.
Okay.
Do you want to say anything about emotional stress? Because
Yeah.
my guess is that is something which we all feel. Every leader feels emotional stress, especially at times when maybe the business isn't going in the direction that they want it to go in. And at that point, they have to try and turn around the ship, and then they have to go and connect with the people in their businesses and influence them to change their behavior in some way.
Yeah.
How do you, when you mentioned emotional stress, is that what you meant, or did you mean emotional stress in terms of trauma inside the individual who's doing
Both.
the talking? Both.
Both.
Okay.
So I find um, with the emotional stress, I'm going to talk about men and women. And so I find with men, a big part of men that come to see me are not the alpha males. And they're like, but I don't know how to get my voice across because I'm more soft spoken. So for them, they have a lot of emotional stress around, I feel like a fraud if I try to posture up and be that big energy when that's not who I am. And they feel a lot of that emotional stress because it makes them feel like they're not good enough, and then it becomes a snowball effect. So for them, the beautiful thing about me teaching them to anchor in the body is it automatically, again, it stimulates those nerves so that they actually, one of the things when we stimulate the celiac nerves. In addition to that, it actually makes you feel safer in your body and safer in who you are, because again, you're connected to yourself and your emotions and you're grounded. And when you're grounded, it actually creates safety. And there's a whole bunch of other nerves within the pelvic floor that gets activated that creates you feeling safe. So the beautiful thing is that my methodologies is if you're more introverted, like a lot of the men that come to me, it helps them to naturally access that inner energy and naturally amplify that out without feeling they have to do push energy. And so it's really beautiful. Whereas on the opposite end, when the occasion comes, which is not often for me, when I get the alpha males, or any kind of extrovert, because I do get a lot of extroverted women, I have to teach them how to like calm that energy down, because it's turning off a lot of people. And again, like the introvert, how do you ground that energy and amplify? I call it invitation energy. So it's like it's like you're a lioness in your lair. You're opening the energy for people to be here versus, all right, everybody. So today we're going to do this. That's very, that's one way to get your voice heard. But in today's society, again, trust, we go back to the beginning of this podcast. Trust is incredible. You need to build trust with people right now and get their nervous systems calmer. So going to the emotional stress, that is a big emotional stressor for people when they're not extroverted, but especially for men because of the pressure to be a man when they're phenomenal men. I get to work with the most amazing men and make them feel super amazing and confident within their skin, and like they don't have to feel like a fraud to get hurt. And it's amazing what happens to them. I had one guy, he was a CFO of a major corporation, and he was up in his chest and he was frenetic, and he just, because he was trying to get his voice heard, and I'm like, okay, Andrew, and just connecting to his body, he was able to, like, his team heard him. His team heard him for the first time because he wasn't coming across with this stressed out energy, trying, because he was so nervous being an introvert and, not an alpha male. But with the women especially, we all hold trauma in our pelvic floor. And, we've got the vagus nerve that goes from our top of our, like from our head, and it goes down the spine into the pelvic floor. So both, no matter what sexes and everything in between that we automatically carry trauma in our pelvic floor. For women especially, it makes them feel a level of unsafe that is unprecedented. It is the amount of work I have to do with, if women have not worked through a lot of their trauma, I actually won't take them on as a client, because of breathing techniques. I can see it because it's been 30 years of doing this. I can see the trauma in someone's body, and quite often I can tell what kind of unresolved trauma that they have, because it shows up in specific voice and body language patterns. But if a woman has too much trauma, it is unethical for me to take her on, because the breathing techniques I do is going to trigger the trauma, and I'm not a licensed therapist. So I have to be very careful.
Wow.
But for a lot of people who have done a certain amount of work on that, I'm able to get them to really breathe in there and release and feel safety, because we've got the pelvic splenic nerves. Now I'm going to go off of my science roll again. The pelvic splenic nerves has multiple functions, including, arousal, making babies, producing more sperm, all the good things you need to make a baby. However, those, what we would call sexual nerves, also creates safety within ourselves with healthy sexuality. And I'm not saying to do anything inappropriate in a workplace, but because of the connection to the vagus nerve and all those nerves, when we breathe into that place, it's so vulnerable for so many, it actually creates real safety. So women feel more powerful, that they can speak their truth. And again, with this beautiful open invitation energy, versus feeling like, unfortunately, women are like, sound like the squealy little bitch trying to get her voice heard. And with women, I love the Me Too movement, because we're talking about these issues. But what has happened is that it has become, oh, she's like another man pushing, and she's a squealy little bitch. So I work with a lot of female leaders who've gotten there by coming across that way, because they don't really know what true feminine power is. But true feminine power is being rooted, anchored, and open, and coming from this beautiful energy flow. So going back to your original question around the emotional stress, it's very much multi-layered in all of it. So it's beautiful that I've been doing this long enough that I could do an assessment on somebody within 2-3 minutes, because I've been doing this for so long. And I'm like, all right, we got to work on this, and this, and we're done.
That's so powerful. One of the things that struck me is, I was surprised by, to be honest, that you were saying that, well, maybe I shouldn't have been, that most of the men who come to you you would describe them as not alpha men. And it sounds like you're saying they're a little bit more introverted.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's obvious. But I would imagine that there's lots of alpha leaders out there who struggle with actually engaging and actually
Absolutely.
achieving the change that they want to achieve because they're not connecting, because they're by
That's right.
definition alpha. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And I do believe that. I believe there's a lot of alpha males out there. They're naturally big energy, but if they learn how to truly channel that energy more internally, they can still be themselves because it always comes back to being yourself. But it's the same thing. It actually helps them to get heard more because then it doesn't come to overbearing. And especially if somebody in their workplace has had a lot of trauma, they're going to shut down. When I've met a lot of alpha men who are just remarkable human beings,
Mm, mm,
beautiful human beings, but they're
mm,
like, hi, everybody. And it's like, if you do that with somebody who is shy or somebody who's not confident, they're going to shut down, or somebody who's had a lot of trauma, they're going to
mm,
shut down. So
mm,
yeah, I do get the occasional alpha male, and I love it. And they love it because they feel like they're actually able to make a much bigger impact in a way that's not going to, I mean, the guys that I attract in my life, the men, whether they're friends like you and colleagues or they're actually people who hire me, they're really good men who stand for all people, and they really want the best for their team. So
mm.
yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So, Cindy, is there anything else that you would like to bring up that we haven't covered um, before we talk about how people can get in touch with you? You've talked about you have a system that you take people through.
Yeah.
You've talked about you've given us quite a few examples of exercises that people can go through in
Mhm.
order to be in their body, to manage their emotional stress before they go on, to deal with the stress of just presenting. And you talked about how you break the speech and the presentation down into component parts that they can either visualize or they can kinesthetically remember. Um, was there anything else that you would like to bring up that you think we've maybe not covered that would help leaders out there who need to be able to be more effective in how they speak from their power?
Yeah. I could literally be on this podcast for 2 days. But here's something that comes up a lot when you're in a situation and you feel like either you're backed into a corner or you don't have the answer.
Mm,
Again, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and then you start over explaining, you start justifying, you start giving away your power.
mm,
However, when you are in those moments, what you want to do is two things: turn it back on them with a clarifying question, so it gives you time to exhale long. The second thing, exhale longer than your inhale, get
mm,
calm, and have the time to formulate the question. So, for example, if you ask me a question, so it seems, so Phil, thank you so much for that question, or thank you for sharing that point of view. I'm curious, to clarify, is this what I'm hearing? Or before I answer, I just have another question for you. Or so you find a way, and as they're talking, it gives you that time to exhale longer than your inhale, to formulate your answer, to make sure you're calm, especially if you're triggered, because it really is the worst thing I have ever seen with most leaders is that they go into justifying, diminishing, one of those two things because they're in the stress response. And then they end up sometimes, especially in a sales conversation, I've seen a lot of deals lost because they end up giving away more than they expected to, and they just lost the sale, as
yeah,
opposed
absolutely.
to really taking that time. But I Phil, I love role playing with clients, especially being a professional actor, because I will talk to clients about who, like, specific, give me your avatars of the types of people or situations that are stressing you out. And then I get to be the actor and become that horrible person. It's awesome.
No,
No, it's great.
absolutely, and I really resonate with that because one of the things I've done quite a lot of is sales training. And as you say, role playing is a very, very powerful tool. Now,
Yes.
it's not often something that many leaders like to do because I often explain that unless they're on the coal face of selling,
Yeah.
quite often they can feel a little bit insecure because they don't know, they don't have all the answers. And they often feel that they have to have a script in their head, or they need to be able to come out with all the features. And that's the worst thing. But when they're training salespeople in a role play scenario, being able to, as you say, ask for a clarification and give one the time to be able to come up with an answer is
Yeah.
very, very powerful.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I have so
Yeah.
many tricks up my sleeve, but and with the role playing, yes, it's great to be role playing, but you need to make sure you don't forget the presentation part of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, and is that something, role playing, is that something you practice with your leaders quite a bit?
Yes.
So that,
Sometimes companies hire me and I just come in and I work with their whole people for a whole day. So I take them through all the different techniques and then we literally like role play them. And it's like magic. It's like the whole team is like transformed by the end of the day. It's so much fun.
I would imagine that'd be very, very powerful, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's the closest thing to actually being in the ring selling. If you're role playing, and I don't know about you, but I've been in scenarios where I'm coaching a team and we're role playing, and it can get quite feisty because, yeah. And I would imagine that with you, it would be even more feisty because,
Yeah.
as you say, you would be able to take on the extreme roles that every now and again salespeople and leaders have to face. And I guess if you can face those and feel comfortable in your own skin, facing those difficult scenarios, then it makes you even more confident, I guess, when you go out there and you're all alone without Cindy as you're speaking from your power coach.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, any last tips that you would want to give? Or, I mean, we've covered a lot. We've covered a
We
lot, I
have.
think, in this talk. How can people get in touch with you, Cindy?
So, two things. My last thing I want to say is that you are magnificent, darling.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that's very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And for the audience, I want you to know that you are more than enough. You are fantastic. You just have to trust in that, because sometimes it's so easy for us to want to push or hustle or try too hard, but we already have the magic in us. So trust you. Trust you. Yeah.
That's very strong, and that's very important, because I think it's very easy for us to compare ourselves to, like, the big alpha male who's just so natural up on stage,
Yeah.
the big alpha male, the big alpha female who's amazing at selling, and it just seems so natural. And if you're an introvert, it looks pretty scary. So what you're saying is trust that you've got everything inside you.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to try so hard. I feel like it's like, you don't have to try so hard. You don't have to give it all away. Yeah. I mean, I love that
Wow.
song, right? Like that song
Wow.
is so great.
Amazing. Amazing. That's amazing. That's great. That's
Great.
fantastic.
I'll sing for your team. But I do work with teams and I work with one-on-ones as well. So sometimes it's like the individual that just hires me privately. Sometimes it's a company that hires me for a team or for the leader. So I mean, it's almost 30 years. I can't wait to celebrate that big milestone. We're at
Well,
28 and a half years right now, technically.
wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible. That's incredible.
it's
Um,
amazing.
and I know that you're involved in, so as well as training leaders
Yep.
to speak from their power, I know that you're doing a lot of other things as well.
Well, yes. So on the acting, singing, dancing side of my career, TV hosting, I have a show called Liberated. And Phil had an opportunity to see the first version, and now we're developing it and going to be doing a world tour with it. Not the whole world, but probably like 6 to 10 cities. you know, so I might be coming to a city near you. And, because I truly am a one love person and the world is in turmoil, most people know me as an actress, as the comedic actress who's like, ta-da, I got rhythm, like, and funny girl. And when I wrote this, I just felt like we needed something. Well, there's definitely funny parts in the show, It's very serious. I mean, I went pretty deep with the stuff that's happening in the world. We tackled racism, like you name it, I probably tackled it. And it's a really deep show. And the feedback that I got was, you really made me think, or you healed me in some way. And while I did make people laugh, a lot of it was really very much about speaking what a lot of people are feeling in the world. So I'm really excited that we're now up leveling it to the show to the next level with a bigger stage and with, dance moves and all that, because we have dance routines we're building in and all kinds of fun stuff. And, I'm defying gravity at almost 50 with the dance moves. They will not be like when I was 25.
It was an amazing show. And I think it's important to explain that it's a one-woman show.
Yeah.
It's just you.
Yeah.
I was blown away by that. I mean, and how long were you on stage for? Was it about an hour and a half or?
It was about an hour and 20 minutes, but we're working to get it down to like a solid hour. But who knows? I mean, if the material needs an hour and a half, then it needs an hour and a half. I mean, it's about the message you want to deliver and the impact. And that's actually a good business role too. What's the message and the impact you want to make? And then you make the show based on that. You make the sale based on that.
So one of the ways of actually getting to know you better is to actually come along to your show.
Well, that's another way. You'll just see a totally different side of me, because you've got,
Really?
I mean, you can see my joie de vivre here, but you can also see my very strategic brain. But yeah, so that's another thing. You could also come to a city near you, or there's also a virtual version that you can just do on buy on demand.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Cindy, this has been fantastic. So before we go,
Okay.
could you explain how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah. So if you go to speakfromyourpower.com, you can find more information there on the training and the speaking piece and influence and persuasion and sales. And if you are interested on learning more about Liberated and coming to one of the shows, you can go to cindyashton.com/liberate me.
And I'll make sure that we've got the links underneath somewhere, wherever you see this podcast.
I love
That's
that.
amazing. Cindy, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much. I look forward to following your development, your shows, and hearing all about the amazing stuff you're doing with leaders all around the world. So again, thank you so much for joining me on the Business Alchemist podcast.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for listening. Have a beautiful day.
And you. Take care.